In 2020, I was browsing a US anti-abortion campaign's website, and I saw they had a messaging course for people who feel at a loss when trying to respond to pro-choice statements. I signed up because we all needed some kind of lockdown hobby. And after almost 2 years, I think there's some interesting lessons to be learnt for people who are progressive communicators, as well as those defending reproductive justice specifically. Basically, I've gone on a pro-life messaging course so that you don't have to. A quick warning, I'm not including any of their really horrible or graphic content, but there will be some mention of sexual abuse. And straight away, I've got to say I don't want to sound like I went deep undercover at an evangelical church or anything. There's some great investigative journalism on the pro-life movement that I'll link in the description, but this isn't that. The messaging course I signed up to was created by an organisation called Live Action, which is basically an online platform for pro-life content, founded by a woman called Lila Rose, who's an example of how the pro-life movement, as well as other conservatives, are diversifying with more millennial-ish, pseudo-feminist spokespeople.
Through the Time's Up and Me Too movements, America is calling for an end to sexual abuse in every institution.
The course kicks off with 6 videos demonstrating pro-life replies to what they seem to think are the most threatening pro-choice arguments, which is quite interesting in itself.
Do we really know when life begins? Some people think that it is a complete mystery, and therefore abortion should be allowed.
Some people say that abortion is permissible because a preborn child or fetus is not a person.
It is often said that abortion is sometimes medically necessary to protect the life or the health of the mother.
When women say, "My body, my choice,"
But abortion is not the only option when a preborn child is diagnosed with a serious or lethal medical condition.
As you might expect, some stuff that's, well, a bit dumb. It seems that even in the privacy of their echo chamber, conservatives still primarily prefer to beat up on straw men.
Or consider him or her as nothing more than a blob-like sea cucumber.
Some abortion advocates will say that prenatal human beings are not persons because they're so small.
There's plenty of obfuscation and pivoting, trying to judo flip past the undeniable and reframe the argument.
women and their bodies must be respected and protected. Bodily rights are especially important when a woman is pregnant, because there is more than one body involved.
There are elaborate analogies and metaphors. Some I thought were quite clever.
Every time in human history that we have said that a certain group of human beings are not persons, it's resulted in a horrible tragedy.
Some may be more relevant to Americans than the rest of us.
Imagine you go hunting with a friend, and the two of you become separated.
And there's definitely a heavy play on the credibility of their messengers.
After all, carrying a baby is a bit more complicated than, say, carrying a football. This is my husband, Benjamin. He's a tight end for the New Orleans Saints, and he's scoring a touchdown.
Okay, maybe not that one so much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be effective. With a definite blurring of the lines between scientific expertise and experts in morality. Okay, I'm being a bit flippant myself, but we shouldn't underestimate these techniques. Firstly, because we know that this throw enough at the wall and see what sticks approach does mean that some stuff does stick. And also because these videos reflect something crucial to the success of the conservative extremists over the years, which is that they have not been shy about taking on the topics which are supposedly weak spots in their arguments. For example, abortion in cases of rape, which large majorities of the American public have supported even if they are against abortion in general. The pro-life movement does not preemptively moderate their message. They lock on to a fundamental belief or point of consensus and just start chipping away at it.
Under our current laws, we do not even give rapists the death penalty. So to put the child to death is to give rapists more rights than we give innocent preborn children.
After that series of videos, this course becomes an email list, but an email list that is heavily focused on providing pro-life activists with content to persuade others. These emails were as interesting to me as the videos because they are the proof points of the overall messaging of the course. They are the drumbeat of examples that the pro-life movement provides their foot soldiers to share day in, day out. I had a go at categorizing the most common themes in these stories, and by far the most common content that they featured was what you might call pro-life lifestyle inspiration. Positive, life-affirming stories about people who could have had abortions and didn't. Doesn't really go into the actual choices around abortion that deeply. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to distinguish most of these stories from the stuff you'd see on local TV news or the recommended articles at the bottom of every website. Another category that they, of course, tap into is the general conservative strategy of pretending they are the victims, with a third of mail-outs containing stories warning of a pro-choice conspiracy that is silencing them on social media platforms and in the courts. However, what surprised me was that they don't try and pretend that the pro-choice side is winning in order to provoke their audience. They're clearly happy with their obvious recent victories in the US, and prefer to use that progress to encourage their audience, with half of the mail-outs containing celebrations of pro-life momentum. When they do turn to demonize abortion, they give us clear villains. Half of all mail-outs mention the abortion industry, and ascribe motivation to those villains, in this case, profit and the spread of an ideology of wanton individualism. No, this is not particularly subtle. Yes, that is Harvey Weinstein's face on a video that claims that because Planned Parenthood help survivors of sexual abuse, that basically they are the same thing. But the way it explains why the villains are villainous is super effective in drawing a really clear moral divide in a storytelling structure they can repeat over and over again. So, what other clues does this messaging course give us about what we can do to resist it? I think there's a couple of ideas in what the authors of this course seem to be scared of. First, men respecting women's right to choose, which you can see live action trying to tackle in their first satirical video.
I deserve to be free from any responsibility for some girl I get pregnant.
I deserve to enjoy sex without commitment, marriage, or parenthood.
Whoever said that conservatives can't do satire, eh? I thought that it's interesting because normally feminists are mainly concerned with the challenge we have in overcoming the previously dominant narrative that men should have dominion over women's bodies. But I had not appreciated that if you have managed to chip away at that entitlement, with more men respecting women's rights, it's the pro-life advocates who then have a challenge. They've got to argue, no, you were right the first time, men, actually you should go back to interfering in women's bodies. The other demographic that stumps them is Gen Z, or Millennials and Gen Z, as they sometimes generously lump us together. They don't seem sure whether to do the usual grouchy dismissal of these crazy kids with their coloured hair, like calling students who walked out of their Catholic high school in protest cowards. Or to try and claim that actually deep down the really cool kids agree with us, as in the article where a Catholic market research firm was commissioned for some slightly dodgy polling. Or to try and find their own young ambassadors and youth-friendly tone. But what significance does this have for those of us outside America? On one hand, the usual American influence over popular political culture means we are getting a disproportionately pessimistic slice of the abortion debate. Outside of the reverses in the US, women's rights activists have actually had a lot of success in the last few years. But we know that money and cultural influence from American politics filters out to the rest of the world indirectly. Live Action founder Lila Rose has herself been over to Europe multiple times, and so it's fair to say that this course is an insight into how the pro-life movement globally is experimenting and exporting its communications tactics. So, as I warned in another video, I don't think we should give in to some progressives' tendency to despair about superior conservative communications resources or strategy. As we've just seen, when you dissect the opposition's internal stuff, you can see that they haven't got it perfect and are struggling to respond to us as well. But the very fact that this e-course exists, that the other side are recognizing where they are at a loss to respond, and that they are investing and experimenting in persuasive content and making it free, open, and easy for their movement to use in their peer networks, is something that should challenge us. One last thing. If you're thinking of doing opposition messaging or content analysis, please take care of yourself first, especially if the topic affects you personally. It's the advice I always give activists, but typically I didn't follow it myself for this research and I regret it. For a good example of how the pro-choice referendum campaign in Ireland carefully managed their opposition monitoring while looking after the welfare of their volunteers who had to watch that stuff, there's a link in the description to Blueprints for Change's Guide to Dealing with Disinformation. If you're interested in watching more videos about activist communications, subscribe to my channel. There's a couple others already there, and I plan to do new ones every now and then. Thank you.